Hello, welcome back to Justin Talks Villa, where this is the Monchi episode. Hello, welcome back. Hope you're all doing very well this evening. I'm going to say Tuesday evening when I'm recording this. I've left it deliberately until now because I wanted to gather my thoughts, have a really good think about what I wanted to say, gather as much information surrounding what is still, at the time of recording, not officially announced, but basically it's happening because it's everywhere, and we are very close to appointing Monchi's replacement. We'll get into that as well. But I wanted to come on really and just, I'm not going to say calm the nerves, because people aren't going to be calmed by what I say. They're going to just say that's just your opinion and that's fine. But I wanted to put my point of view over and give you where I am with his reign at Villa, the job he's done at Villa, where he has left us, any positives, negatives. And unfortunately, when you are in the footballing world and you work in that industry, especially as probably the only safe job at any football club is the owners, because it's up to them who they hire and fire. And unless they decide to sell or something disastrous goes wrong, they decide when they're going to leave. But everybody else, it's a very movable feast, isn't it? It's a very short job span in most cases, unless you're the tea lady, then you could probably have a good 50-year career. But in the footballing side of the business, so coaching, background stuff, so what we're seeing with this job, the recruitment side and the players, then there's a very short amount of times a lot of these people spend at football clubs, and Monchi's has been 2 years, two basically full seasons. And the reason he's not here anymore is because it's perceived he failed. And ultimately, I suppose he has. And by that, I mean the majority of the deals that he has overseen whilst he was in the job haven't been good enough. They haven't worked. His transfer strategy, which I have to believe he's the one that implemented at Villa, and the conjecture surrounding currently his relationship with Unai Emery and Damien Vidigani and himself is still very patchy. We're still getting bits and bobs. John Townley's done a fantastic article that I've read earlier, which is great, sort of delving in and getting a few bits of inside information from people within the club about their relationship. And I think where this all started was very, very strange last night. I was doing the phone-in show, and a couple of people hinted in the comments section that I saw Monchi's name a couple of times come up, that people had started hearing a very vague rumour that potentially he could be off. So I have got a couple of connections, and I thought I'll just stick a text in and I'll see if anything comes back. Now, if you go back and watch that episode, you will see more or less the moment where the message came straight back and confirmed that he was indeed leaving the club. Now, I didn't really know what to do with that information when it first came through. And I will apologise for whoever was on the phone line at that moment, because my focus went away from the phone in and into what was happening. And more and more people were commenting. I then decided to say that I believe that it is true, that he's leaving. And if you are following me on X particularly, you will know that in the summer, the information I received about Marco Asensio, I shared, and it bit me firmly on the backside when he didn't eventually put pen to paper and arrive at Villa. So then I decided, what do I do with this information? Because the type of person I am, I love the club. I want what's best for the club. And I've got a few contacts that sometimes come up with good stuff. Most of the time don't. But I thought, no, I'm going to put it out because I think it's worth putting out. And I think it was strong enough and credible enough information to do that. But very risky for me, obviously, because of what happened last time. And obviously one or two jumped on and told me to wind my neck in. A couple of very funny things were said, actually, which I don't mind so much. Anyway, moving on. So I put it out, and then within, I'm going to say an hour, Tom Colomosi and John Townley had indeed got the full story and had put the news out via official media, if you like, that he was indeed leaving the club. And I have to say, if you'd have said to me yesterday morning what would surprise you most by the end of the day, then I think it would have been up there that one of those three would be ending up at the end of the day not being a part of Aston Villa anymore, because it's still very early in the season and they was under huge amounts of pressure in the summer with the financials. It literally does my head in that I keep having to, every episode I do about every subject I talk about with the Villa, whether it's the manager, the players, off the field stuff, always comes back down to money. But that's the industry we're in, and that's the times we're in, especially at Aston Villa. So I won't harp on too much about that. But obviously his reign at Villa has been impacted on the amount of money he has been able to spend at Aston Villa. So if we have a quick look at this table first, which is called Valuable. I don't know, I've used it a couple of times already. It's a very good resource, but it's in very early stages of development. This is Kieran Maguire's website, which is trying to get a place where you can go and get really good information about the financial side of clubs, profit and sustainability, and all these different issues. But this one page in particular, you can change it to a specific amount of time where you can see about transfers. Now, the money side of this is a little bit sketchy because a lot of time clubs don't announce the exact figures of player sales and player incomings. They're all, a lot of the time they are undisclosed. So for this is, I'm using it as a reference more that the players that came in and went out. So if we look at the overall transfer balance, 23-24 to 25-26, which is his reign at Aston Villa, because that's when he came in June 2023. Then if we go to, let's look at the incomings first, shall we? This is on in fee order from the highest amount we've paid for somebody down to the lowest, obviously. So we start with Moussa Diaby, 52 million. Now, we could say that wasn't a failure in as much as we basically broke even on him. Again, give or take what was reported in the media, but I don't believe we lost money on Moussa Diaby, and he had a reasonable time at Villa. I'm not going to say it was a massive success. Onana, £50 million last summer. Jury's still out. We've had moments where he's looked very good. Unfortunately for him, he hasn't been on the pitch enough, especially this season when we've needed him. So again, I think you can have an opinion on a player without specifically thinking them are good or bad until they leave. I think you can have obviously the overall time at a club, you can say, once they've gone, you can say whether it was a success or not. Ian Maatson, 38 million. At the moment, I'm going to say it's a miss, only because he hasn't played enough and he hasn't had him running the team. So it's a difficult one to, again, judge that one. But it's a lot of money for a backup left back. Could that money, and this is a repeated issue, I think, and I believe one of the factors why Monchi is no longer the director of football operations. So Maatsen, 38 million for a backup left back. I mean, if Luca Dean had left, which I think everybody thought was going to happen, then you're buying a first choice left back for 38 million. The fact he hasn't been able to dislodge Luca Dean means to me that he wasn't probably the correct signing at the time. That's not to say he's not a good player and he won't come good and he won't have a good spell at Villa. Again, too many variables still about a lot of these players, which isn't a good sign. Pau Torres, I'm going to say that's a success. Now, this season, he hasn't played much, but overall, I believe since he arrived in 23-24, he has been a success. He's a wonderful footballer. You might not think he is a defensive colossus, but for the way we want to play, he was scouted. Emery had worked with him before. He knows exactly how to use him and how he wanted to use him at Villa. So for me, that was a success. Gassand. Jury out at the moment. 5 games. Totally unfair to give a massive opinion on a player that's played less than 5 full games for Aston Villa. From what we've seen so far, the acclimatisation to the Premier League, he's struggled a little bit. That's not to say he won't get up to speed. Daniel Marlon, a very interesting one for me, because it's been suggested that some players were pushed by Monchi as a player that they really want to bring in. Now, the way Marlon hasn't been used by Emery might maybe suggest that he wasn't 100% on board with the Marlon signing. Now, a lot of this is my opinion on things. I don't know this. The information I got on Monchi, I'll just be categorically clear, was simple. He's leaving. That is it. I don't know any more about the ins and outs of it. I know a couple of things about his relationship with Emery, which surprised me, but I'll come on to that in a minute. So I would imagine the three of them sit around with a team of analysts and data people, and they look at, and this is, if you go to the John Townley article, it does back up what I'm saying here. It's a group collective. Monchi is tasked with going away and finding a few players that Unai Emery, in a position Unai Emery wants to strengthen. He'll come back and he will probably recommend one. There might be 5. He might say, that's the one I think we should go for. Now, depending on how conversations go and how these meetings go, and obviously money, who they can afford, they probably have a target 1 or an A target where, you know, that's the one they really want. Can we do it financially? No. So who are we looking at next? Do we desperately need to fill this gap in the team? Yes. So we need a player that can play in that role, can also do that and that. So these are your 3 other options. And then it might be that Monchi really, really backed and pushed for Marlon. And Emery said, okay, at the options, I'm not 100% sure, but we'll go with you. Maybe, I'm just, again, conjecture. It's just my opinion. And maybe Monchi had really pushed Marlon because he thought he was the right man for us, and it hasn't worked as of yet because he just doesn't play him as much. So, again, I think this is why it feeds into why Monchi has left and why the guy that's coming in, who we'll get onto, is coming in because he's got a longer working relationship with Unai, and I believe that tighter connection hopefully will lead to the meeting of minds, and the very similar outlooks, both Basques from Spain, will probably hopefully lead to a more unified decision on each player that comes in from now on, because we're still under the cosh money-wise, so we're going to have to be going to have to box clever with signings. But I think there's definitely been an issue behind the scenes, whereas they've disagreed on players. That's what I believe. Morgan Rogers, categorical masterstroke for £15 million. Some of these now we're getting into some of these where the other side of what I believe is Monchi's strategy at Villa is playing out. So the way we've tried to do this, the Ealing Junior and the Baranchea one were obviously make weights counterweights in the Douglas Luiz deal out. So we obviously agreed to sign those, and then they came to us and they went to them. Now, this is also been seen with Lewis Dobbin. We looked with Ozcan, Jelkovic, not so much those players because they are loan players, and Mosquera, where we have scouted and looked for younger profile players that I believe Monchi believed were uncut gems that needed just a bit of Emery magic sprinkled on them, and they could go on and be a first teamer at Villa for a bit like, I suppose, the Rodgers deal. You pick up a bargain, you bring them in, you polish them up, get them in the first team, and they hit the ground running, and all of a sudden, wow, where'd you get him? Excuse me, where'd you get him from? 15 million quid. What an absolute masterstroke. Unfortunately, we've seen one of these players. That's Morgan Rodgers. Because Illing Jr., Dobbin, Barinchea, Ozcan, Nedeljkovic, and I've got to say, from what I've seen in Mosquera, I saw him a couple of times in pre-season, he's going the same way as well. They are loaned out and they disappear for a season or 2 seasons, and then they get sold. We might make a marginal profit on them. We might make a marginal loss on them. Never to be seen again. And I think this is one of the big cruxes on why Monchi's gone. That side of his blueprint for success has failed. And we have wasted a lot of money on some of these players. So you look at just those there, 15 million, 14 million, 10 million. That's 39 million, 48 million. Garcia, I think still for 7 million. He's maybe one again. We'll say 1.5 because Garcia, 49, 56, 60. You know, you're looking at the best part of 60 to 70 million pounds for these players over, what is it, 24, 25, 25, 26. 60 million pounds on a load of players that are never, ever going to play in our first team is, in the situation we are in with the finances, is insane. And again, this is why I believe his job is no longer his job. And when you look at the fact we've had to let Jacob Ramsey go, which was deemed necessity, then you can start feeding into where maybe this is where the players are feeling disillusioned and are now starting to think, not what's the point, but where do we go from here? Because we've been challenging, all of a sudden gone. And they've seen 5, 6, 7, 8 of these young players coming in for not small amounts of money, none of them breaking into the first team. They might have knocked around with 1 or 2 of them in training and thought, what are we doing here? These are they're just nowhere near up to the standard we need them to be. Then they disappear off on a loan and they're saying, well, didn't he cost 20 million quid? You know, yet we've been told now that Jacob's got to go because we've got to make up the shortfall in money. It's very frustrating, and I believe one of the big reasons why he's no longer here. So these are the sales. John Duran, who was signed pre-Monchi, nobody can argue with that profit of 65 million, and I don't think still many people would argue that it was the right decision to sell him. Some would, but I don't. Diaby, again, didn't lose money on him. Douglas Luiz, another player that had to be sold for reasons of finances. Jacob Ramsey, the big one, and probably, I firmly believe, the catalyst behind why he has left the building now. And I'm hoping his departure and whatever issues were floating around the training ground, his departure will mean that they can finally draw a line under the summer that we thought they might be able to do last week, but they might actually be able to do it now. Philogene, Bidet, strange one. Sold him, brought him back, sold him again. We'll see. Kellyman, another strange one, having to flog academy prospects to try and make money. He's madness. But none of them particularly have gone on and been absolutely brilliant. Philogene scored a hat-trick last week, and I saw a few suggesting that why would we sell him? That was against the worst team categorically in the championship, and they were literally falling apart. Not to degrade scoring a championship hat-trick, that's fantastic, but let's see what he does over a season. Kellyman, jury's out. Fantastic when he was in the youth team at Villa. I really liked him. Hopefully he doesn't go the same way as other players that have left. Archer has never done it. Ramsey's been injured since he's left. Irabunan's an interesting one because he has had minutes this season, and it seems that David Moyes likes him. So that could be a snip at 9 million. Carlos wanted to leave. That's the first Philogene sale. Kessler Hayden was never going to make the first team. Sanson was just to disappear because he was never going to play. Finazaz has gone on to have a good career and he's now again moved. Some of these are just loan deals out the club for 12 months. So it leaves us with this over 2 seasons. This is his final rough estimate, obviously. It's not set in stone. That he spent 331 million. He recouped 318 million. So a net spend of 13 million isn't bad. Minus 13 million, apologies, not plus 13 million. So it's not terrible, is it? On the money side of it, but we can definitely argue that it's not the best on the playing side of it. It's not the best. And we need to do better. And the squad is aging. And there was 9 players that played against Sunderland that were not Unai Emery players. That is probably one of the biggest indicators that our transfer policy over the last 2 seasons has indeed failed. So it has been addressed. Monchi has departed the building. The new man seemingly is on his way in. Who is he? And can he be successful at Villa? We'll get into it in a second. So, the new man. Last thing I'll say on Monchi is, I believe firmly he came in with good intentions, a good track record, a strong work ethic, and he wanted the best for Villa. Unfortunately, like in life, it hasn't worked for him. I wish him all the very best in whatever he does next in his job and his career and his life, but his time at Villa is up. So we thank you. I thank you for your work at Villa. I'm sorry it hasn't worked out. We will move on and hopefully we will improve now. So, who is the man that most of the press are suggesting is going to be the man for Villa? Right, here we go. This man here, his name is Roberto Olabe. His most recent job was sporting director at Real Sociedad in March 2018 to 2025. He was responsible for numerous signings and played a key role in developing youth talent. His notable signings include Alexander Isak, signed from Dortmund for 15 million and later sold to Newcastle for 60 million. Mikel Moreno, who was signed from Newcastle for 12 million euros, these are, in 2018. He made 240 appearances and then went to Arsenal, where he's doing really well. Martin Odegaard initially came on loan but was signed permanently from Real Madrid, where he impressed before, as we all know. He's now at Arsenal and he's the club captain. So there's a lot of players here where he has done a fantastic job in. And that's one of the parts of his job. He was coaching. He's had a coaching career. He's had a playing career. He was a goalkeeper for 10 years, which is strange because Monchi was a goalkeeper as well. He played for Mirandas, Alaves, Salamanca, and Real Sociedad. He was coaching and a director. Following his retirement in 1999, he transitioned into coaching, leading Real Sociedad's youth team to a national title. He briefly managed Real Sociedad's senior team in 2001-2002, guiding them away from relegation. However, he received a ban for not possessing a coaching license. Seems a bit harsh when he's just saved them. He had a short managerial spell at Eibar, Emery, and Unai Emery's club that he owns and has a lot of history with. His family history, Real Union, which is a very interesting connection to Unai, and would definitely lean into the fact that there is a real good bond between the two. Under his leadership at Real Sociedad, they experienced significant successes, including winning the Copa del Rey in 2021, consistently finishing in the top 6 of La Liga, returning to the Champions League for the 23-24 season after a decade's absence, developing and retaining talented young players such as Isaac Moreno and Zubamendi. Olabe also spent time as the director of football for an Aspire group, helping prepare the nation for the 2022 World Cup. He contributed to developing youth systems, and he was then he's been basically, it's been announced, not announced officially, but that he would be coming in to Aston Villa. So what kind of a job does he need to do, and where do we want to see ourselves in the next 12 months? So his first 12 months, he has got, what are we in now? October, nearly in October. So we've got October, November and December to sit, discuss, strategize and look at the January transfer window. What do we do there? Initially, I don't believe he'll have a huge impact, obviously, because of the nature of his role. But what I do hope for is the fact that Monchi is no longer there. And if there has been any uncomfortableness around the training ground surrounding himself, then that hopefully will dissipate now and we will be able to move on. And I keep saying it, and I'm not being harsh on the players, but yes, some of them can feel rightly annoyed and frustrated that we haven't progressed, especially this summer. Some of them can feel annoyed and frustrated that their best mate has been sold, Ramsey. But we are annoyed. We are frustrated as well as the fans that pay our hard-earned money to go and watch this team perform. So what I want to say to the players is, he's gone. I'm not saying you've had your way, but whatever's happened has happened. It is time now, categorically, to be professional and get yourselves in a headspace where you can perform near or close to your very best, because we deserve that. Yes, you might be frustrated that it's not working at the moment, but only you can change that on the pitch. So let's hope that this appointment allows that breathing space around the training ground, lifts the mood, lifts the spirit, and hopefully we can spark and get the result that we desperately want. 2 home games this week. I'm massively backing Unai Emery to turn this around. He's obviously had an input. What I believe he's had an input in Monchi leaving. And what I alluded to earlier, the other bit of information I have received is that I was always under the illusion that Monchi, Vidigani and Emery were very tight and they've had a long working relationship. And it turns out that they're all mates, but the big friendship group is Vidigani and Emery. They have worked together for a very long time. Thick as thieves, very close, work very closely together. Monchi was an important part of the team, but he wasn't as close and didn't have the historical working time with Emery as I believed. So I was a little bit surprised to hear that. And ultimately, that's one of the reasons I think that it's been probably quite easy to ease him to one side. There's a few reports floating around that he was happy to go. He's going back to Spain, where he intimated he probably wanted to go back to be with his family. And apparently he's also going to be retained within the wider V Sports company that Nassif Suarez and Wes Edens have formed to umbrella over a lot of football clubs that we own in that group. So it seems it was amicable. It seems everybody was happy to draw a line under it. The players who were frustrated and annoyed about maybe the way he went about his business, maybe the decisions he made. I hope they were all made in good faith. It hasn't worked. We're in a bit of a pickle. The recruitment hasn't been good enough. There hasn't been enough hits. There's been too many misses. The strategy has to change. We need to focus on the first team now, especially because we need a fit and firing first team. We need reinforcements, we need quality, and we need players that can perform at the level that we need them to perform at. Okay, that's it from me. I hope I've made some kind of semblance of sense in that. Again, it's just my opinion, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. Some of you do. Right. So we've got to the end. It's 30 minutes in. Hopefully it's not too long a listen for you all. A couple of things I wanted to say right at the end, because if you have got this far and you are still listening, there might be one or two of you still listening, then I'd like to ask a favour. In the comments section, if you've got this far, then this will tell me if you've got this far. You can either do one of two things. So just stick the email address up. So this is the email address, okay? Either email me or drop a comment in the comment section and just tell me what you enjoy about the show and what you're not so keen on. Okay? Doesn't have to be long. Can be, I enjoy that episode. I enjoy it when you do that. Not so much when you do that, because I see the analytics. I see the peaks and the troughs. I see what does well and what doesn't do well. And I'm still early in my journey of creating content. It is going very, very well. I am enjoying it immensely. And if you can as well, head over to Substack, take a picture of that little QR code, subscribe to my Substack. And if you put your email in, every time I release an article or a written piece, I will also be using it to push out episodes, updates, and stuff like that. It's a lovely platform. It's not hugely populated at the moment, but everybody I'm reading on there that are putting written work out, they're lovely, and there's a nice community feel to it rather than what's going on other platforms. You know the one. So that's interesting. So get subscribing to that up there. If it's the right way, it might be that side, I don't know, but it's the orange thing that's in the corner. And just let me know what you like, what you don't like. I've attempted to do match previews with a bit of tactical analysis and looking at head-to-heads and stuff like that, which I have enjoyed doing. But I'm sort of wondering whether just to put it back to purely my opinion on things. I think people hopefully enjoy my opinion on things. I'd like to think I'm balanced, I'm fair, and I've got a positive outlook, and I try and see the good in everybody. So I think I might just revert back to just doing opinion pieces pre-match, post-match, and I will be throwing a bit of data in when it's interesting. As the season rolls on, obviously, there's going to be more and more data to look at, head-to-heads, form, you know, stuff like that. So that will be definitely coming in and out. I love looking at the goals and analysing those, which I did, seems like a million years ago when we actually scored a goal in the league. So that I will be trying to do. But ultimately, I'm an opinion-based podcast on Aston Villa, and I love interacting with you guys, who I love. I love you all. I think you're great. The people that come on the phone in are fantastic. If you haven't joined us for one, come along and join us for one. It's a lovely atmosphere. People have really good opinions. We don't have to agree, but we can get on. And it's a nice little environment, a lovely little community that's growing here now, and I'm loving every minute of it. I'm going to shut up now because I've gone on for far too long. So thanks for watching. Have a good couple of days. The Bologna episode will be out tomorrow at some point. Have a good night. Love you all. Up the Villa.